All right, let's jump right in. We hear all the time about which countries are the richest or have the biggest economies. But does that really tell you what it's actually like to live there? Today, we're going to dig into a really powerful tool that tries to answer a much deeper question. What actually makes a country a good place for people to live and to flourish?
I mean, seriously, think about it for a second. If a country is rolling in cash, does that automatically mean its people are healthier, more educated, and have more opportunities? For decades, we pretty much measured a nation's progress by its economic output alone. But that's kind of like judging a book by its price tag, right? It tells you nothing about the story inside. It just doesn't give you the full picture.
So here's what we're going to cover in this explainer. First, we'll tackle what human development even means. Then, we'll unpack the three key ingredients used to measure it. We'll take a look at a map of the world's progress, explore the really surprising relationship between wealth and well-being, and finally, get to why all of this is such a big deal. Okay, so first things first, what are we even talking about with this human development idea? Well, at its heart, it's about moving the spotlight, taking it off the economy and putting it squarely on people. It's this simple, but honestly pretty revolutionary idea that the real wealth of a nation isn't its money, it's its people and the chances they have in life. Now, to actually measure this, to put a number on it, the United Nations came up with a tool called the Human Development Index, or HDI. Instead of just one data point, it's a composite index. You can think of it like a country's report card, but instead of just grading its economy, it grades the well-being of its actual citizens.
So, how on earth do you boil down something so huge into a single number? What are the ingredients for this recipe for a better life? Well, the folks who created the HDI wanted to keep it super focused on the things that are, universally important to all of us, no matter where we live. And this is what they landed on. Just three things. 1, a long and healthy life. 2, knowledge. And 3, a decent standard of living. It sounds so simple, right? But it's actually incredibly powerful. These are aspirations that people in every single culture, in every country, can totally relate to. Let's break them down. So, that first piece of the puzzle is all about health, and they measure this with one really powerful stat: life expectancy at birth. It basically answers the fundamental question: if a baby is born in a country today, how many years can they expect to live? It's a fantastic way to get a snapshot of everything from public health and nutrition to basic safety. Second up is knowledge. This one's got two parts. First, they look at a kid starting school today and ask, how many years of school can this child expect to get? Then, they look at the adults in the population and ask, how many years of school did they actually finish? So you get this really cool picture of both the present situation and what the future of education looks like in that country. And finally, yes, we do get to the money. A decent standard of living is measured by what's called gross national income, or GNI, per person. Basically, the average income. But here's the really crucial part. It's only 1/3 of the final score. It recognizes that yes, money is important. It buys you food, shelter, all that good stuff. But it is not the only thing that matters. All right, so we have our three ingredients: health, education, and income. When you put it all together and calculate the score for every country, what does the world actually look like? Well, the data shows us a world that's made amazing progress, but also one with some really huge, stubborn gaps. And this table just lays it all out, doesn't it? I mean, look at the extremes. At the very top, you've got places like Iceland and Switzerland, with scores so close to a perfect 1.0. A baby born in Switzerland today can expect to live to be 84 years old. Now, look at the bottom. South Sudan. Life expectancy is just over 57. Let that sink in. That's a 26-year gap in how long the average person gets to live. That's an entire generation, right there in the numbers. Okay, but now we get to what is, for me, the most fascinating part of all this. This is where we go beyond the obvious rankings and find the countries that totally mess with our expectations, where the amount of money a country has tells one story, but the well-being of its people tells a completely different one. And this is the big aha moment. A country's wealth just doesn't tell the whole story. What the HDI lets us do is compare a country's rank based on its wealth to its rank based on human development. And when those two numbers are way off, that's when you find a really interesting story about a country's priorities, about how well it's turning its money into a better life for its people. So check this out. These countries all have a big negative number. That means their rank for wealth is way, way higher than their rank for human development. Take Guyana, for example. It's 54 spots lower on the human development ladder than its income would predict. This often hints that a country might be rich, maybe from something like oil, but that wealth hasn't quite trickled down into longer lives or more years in school for the average person. At least, not yet. But then you get the complete opposite. These are the countries that are, you could say, punching way above their weight class. A positive number means they're doing a much better job on human development than you'd expect just by looking at their bank account. Look at Tonga, 38 places higher on the HDI scale than the GNI scale. This is often a sign of really smart policies, that they're incredibly good at taking the resources they do have and turning them into real, tangible gains in health and education for their people. So, we've seen how it works, we've seen what it tells us, but why should we even care about a statistical index like the HDI? What does it matter in the real world? Well, it's all about changing the entire conversation about what progress even means.
At the end of the day, the real power of the HDI is that it forces us to look beyond just the economy. It paints a much fuller, more human picture of how a country is doing. It shifts the whole goal for governments, you know? It changes it from let's grow the economy to let's improve people's lives. It puts a spotlight on those crazy inequalities we just saw, and it gives us a yardstick to see if we're actually making progress on the things that truly matter.
So, where do we as a planet stand right now? Well, the average HDI for the entire world is 0.756. That's humanity's current score. It shows just how far we've come, but it also shows us how much work there is left to do to make sure that everyone, no matter where they're born, gets a real shot at a long, healthy, and meaningful life. And that really brings us to the final big question. If we agree that this is a better way to measure success, a long, healthy life, education, and a decent standard of living, then what does that mean for the future? It forces us to ask, what should we be focusing on next? What are the things we need to do to push that number up for absolutely everyone?